I remember being in the groups and listening to the way that you were coaching everybody and being like, that's what I needed to hear. That's what I needed to hear. And also just being blown away by you because not only do you have all of the academia behind you, but you also really incorporate the intuitive, the spiritual, the hypnosis. Like it truly is all, it's, very well rounded.
Welcome to the Mindful Method podcast, where we don't just fill your ears, we fill your mind with the tools to enhance your emotional and physical reality. I'm your host, Jiordana, here to guide you on this journey of the body-brain connection and help you take your power back to create the life you've always wanted. So grab a seat, because class is in session and our method is on the syllabus. Here at the Mindful Clinic, we're not just changing your mind, we're changing your life. One mindful moment at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. I am so excited to introduce one of my favorite humans in the whole world, and also just like one of the most gifted beings. Today we have Natalie Holbrook, and Natalie is truly a gifted intuitive astrologer. I have been working with Natalie for a long time. She's been in my program. She's done so many readings for me and people around me. Natalie is an entrepreneur and a leader. Natalie is also the founder of a very exciting program, which we'll talk about soon, called Holy Wealth Method. Like, are you kidding? It sounds amazing. A system that weaves mysticism and materials to reprogram the subconscious, create limitless manifestations, and build confidence in magnetic negotiation, all through the lens of astrology. And you guys are going to get a little taster of how that works today. She is the author of upcoming best-selling book, God, Astrology, and You, and she speaks on stages and hosts retreats worldwide. Her work with clients transcends the ordinary, helping them raise their vibration and elevate their business impact and legacy to new heights. Welcome, Natalie, to the Mindful Method podcast.
Thank you, my dear. I am so honored to be here. And I just had this flashback of before you and I even started working together, of listening to Mindful Method podcast back in December and having this moment where I was like, this podcast is changing my life. So it's really crazy to actually be on it right now. I just realized that.
That's so funny. Yeah, isn't it so great when things come full circle like that?
Yeah. And I love it when it's like sometimes we don't even consciously manifest it. It's just
Totally.
happening in the background. And then we're like, oh, wait, duh, of course it's happened.
Those are the best manifestations. I had one of
Yeah.
those come through recently and I was like, oh my God, I forgot that this is something I wanted. And now here I am doing it. And I didn't even have to like hope on it or like think about it all the time. It just happened in the background. Thank you, God, universe, right? Okay, so Natalie, you obviously I did an introduction for you. It was pretty like wide, and it gave a really good idea and concept of who you are and what you do, but there's so much more to you. So I would love to know your story and like what brought you to where you are right now.
Oh my gosh, so much. It's like, where do we begin, right? So I grew up in California. But I mean, yeah, I mean, my entire life, kind of why MFM resonated with me so much is because I grew up just always feeling like I didn't love my body and I didn't know what to eat. And I struggled with first anorexia. I was modeling when I was younger. And so when I went through that, I was like, well, I'm 5'9" and I need to weigh 120 pounds. And the only way I'm going to get there is by not eating. And that worked until my metabolism in my 20s was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And that actually catapulted me, though, into learning about health and nutrition. And before I really dove into that, I actually lived in Las Vegas. I was a nightclub promoter. I lived and worked in nightlife. After I was nightclub promoting, I worked as a nightlife host. I was literally like living the craziest, wildest life. Like everything that you see happens in Vegas, it's that times a million. Like it's like everything that's in The Hangover, it's that.
Oh my
And
God.
I started to work as a nightlife journalist, and it was so fun. I was interviewing like Cascade and Steve Aoki and Swedish House Mafia and Skrillex and all these huge names. I don't know if you even know this about me,
No, I
Jordan.
don't. That's why I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was 23. It was like the dream life. And then I got really, really sick because I was partying so much. I was taking Molly all the time. I was drinking all the time. I got DUIs. Like I was in trouble always. And then when I got a DUI, my second time that I got the DUI, I had to wear this ankle monitoring alcohol bracelet. And my friends and I called it the Lohan because Lindsay Lohan had one at the same time. And this is like during the heat of summer where it's like 105 degrees out. And I would wear these like tall, sexy boots to cover up my alcohol bracelet and not drink. And so that actually is what forced me into sobriety because then I had to stop drinking. And, it was beautiful to do that because I'm always like, I was actually raised Mormon. Also, like, I've known the life of not drinking and how to have fun without alcohol. And so it actually helped to bring me back into my true authentic self of like just being fun and goofy and like a big weirdo and silly. And I enrolled all of my other friends to not drink with me. And we would go out and hang out with the DJs still and like have a blast sober. So that was this really pivotal time that changed my life. And then after that, I still had all these digestive issues. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to get serious about my health. And I left Las Vegas. I moved back to my parents' house in the Bay Area and I began to study nutrition. And even through studying nutrition, and I actually became a holistic nutritionist, even through that, I still wasn't able to get my quote unquote dream body. Like I got to a place where I did love my body and I did, have gratitude for it, but there still was this like binge eating type of thing that was going on. And I think, and I'm sure you can relate to this, that then sometimes when you step into, oh, now I'm a health coach, now I'm a nutritionist, there was even more pressure. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, now I even have to be more perfect, or why aren't I super skinny? And I remember this one girl was like, I love that you're not like so skinny as a nutritionist. And that was actually like the worst thing that someone could have said to me because I was like, oh my God, you calling me a fat nutritionist, And I was not like, very healthy weight, I'm just
Yeah.
not like naturally stick thin person, right? And so during that time though, as I was going back to school to get a master's for nutrition, and during this time I was extremely lonely. I was living in LA. I was 32 years old, and I was taking this walk on the beach one day because I was always like, what am I doing? Am I really doing this? Like I was going back to school. It was like 22-year-olds who I was in class with were like dissecting frogs in anatomy class. Like my other friends are like climbing the corporate CEO ladder and, having kids or whatever. And I was like, all right, God, like I surrender. Tell me if this is even right. And I was listening to a podcast that day. I was in Malibu walking on the beach, and they were talking about Pisces energy and how Pisces energy always has to deal with some type of existentialism or confusion or feeling of separation and loneliness. And I had felt that my entire life. And I was like, okay, maybe I have this Pisces energy somewhere in me, even though I'm a Taurus. So I literally ran back to my car, pulled up my birth chart. I didn't even know how to do this at the time. And I was like, okay, let me just figure this out. And I realized that I have Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, where it's kind of this like additional sun essentially in Pisces. And at that moment, I was like, this confirms everything. Holy shit, I need to learn this. And so there was this teacher in Orange County, which was about 2 hours from LA, that I would go down and drive and see every single weekend. And we would have these meetings for 2 hours. And within 2 months, it was as if I had just known everything. It was like someone hit a button on me that was like, remember, like reactivate. And I just knew everything about astrology. And so, as I was health coaching still at the time and going back to school for the master's, I had clients and I started to incorporate the astrology into our sessions because I would be able to see, like, oh, maybe this gut issue that you have is actually tied to this wound that you have with your mom or whatever else. And from there, then the COVID hit, and I was able to kind of switch my business from health coaching into astrology coaching because all of a sudden people heard what I was doing, and I actually was like, how to wait list for readings.
Oh my gosh,
So
Natalie,
that has been.
I didn't even know half of that stuff about you, but I love you so much more now that I know. I can like literally just picture you with a like alcohol bracelet on, like putting cowboy boots on top of it.
Yeah.
I'm dead. And also that's why I love you so much because our stories like resonate. I always find these people.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, thanks so much for sharing. I know how magical you are from like an astrology perspective, and I've had another astrologer on here too. So if you guys haven't listened to her speak on astrology and you're here being like, okay, So like my Virgo's in the microwave and this and that, like I totally understand the skepticism around it, but like let's just call a spade a spade. Planets are real. Planets affect the way the earth works. Like especially if we think about the moon and water, we are 70% water. Of course, planets are going to affect our micro like makeup, our emotions, etc. So just so that we have that clear before we move on. But I want to talk a little bit about your experience with MFM, and then we're going to go into my chart reading, and you guys are going to see what's up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so like I mentioned, like it just, even though I knew what to eat, I knew what to do with, my food, I still had this thing that was just holding me back from actually having the body of my dreams. And I would work out. I was that person who would like go to Barry's boot camp. I would go to all these workouts and I would sometimes gain weight. And I was like, what is going on? And
Yeah.
so first it started out where I joined the detox program, and
Yeah.
that was really interesting because we found that maybe it wasn't the parasites necessarily in my body that were causing everything, but the parasites of my environment that were really affecting me. And I think that I was sending you a voice note where I was like, yeah, I'm not eating sugar. I'm only eating coconut sugar. And you were like, okay, just kind of like waiting, like she's going to come back. And I had this moment in April that there was a company that I was working with and they decided to let me go. And I was really upset and I completely spiraled. And as I spiraled, I remember there was this week where I was like eating ice cream every day, but it was like a mini binge. And it was during that I was like, okay, I still have a problem. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get an ice cream and having fun. It was like, I'm getting ice cream to punish myself. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something going on here. So when I started, I was so done with myself. I was so fed up with having this thing be a cycle in my life for such a long time that then when I came to you and started the program, it was incredible. And I remember being in the groups and listening to the way that you were coaching everybody and being like, that's what I needed to hear. That's what I needed to hear. And also just being blown away by you because not only do you have all of the academia behind you, but you also really incorporate the intuitive, the spiritual, the hypnosis. Like it truly is all, it's, very well rounded. It's all there. And so as I went through and did all of the journaling and really sat with these different pieces of myself, I realized that one of the biggest things for me was that it actually wasn't my inner child, it was my inner teen. It was the inner teen who was probably, 12, 13 years old in sixth grade, who for the first time gained weight. All of a sudden, I went into middle school and I became really shy, and all of my best friends in elementary were popular. Like I was really shut off. And then when I gained this weight, it was like, oh, I'm not worthy anymore. And I remember there was this experience where there was this boy who was like, hey, you're really pretty. And then they all ran away laughing. And I took it as like he's making fun of me and saying that I'm not pretty. But maybe he really was saying I was pretty. Who knows? But I took it as like, oh my gosh, they're lying and saying that I'm actually ugly by saying that, right? And it was this thing that my self-esteem and my self-concept and self-image just went completely downhill at that time. And it was doing the hypnosis work, doing the journaling, really sitting with that teenage version of myself that is truly what healed everything. And there were so many mornings and days and nights that I would sit and do the hypnosis and the journals and listen to the calls. And it was this moment in my life, like because of you, Jordana, and your program, that literally changed my life. Because I was able, I'm dead serious, because I was able to heal her and sit with her and see, where also in my generation, my lineage, that all had this had all come from. Like I really saw that I wasn't just healing this for myself and for that teenage version of me, but for everyone before. And I was so committed that like this will end with me. This does not carry on. And so it was just the best thing in the whole world. It honestly, to this day, I think there's the spiritual in terms of like, let's journal, let's reflect, but then also the practical of when you were like, you're having sugar in your house and you're going to go eat it when you want it. Like that also was huge for me because I had such a restrictive mindset my entire life. And I remember there was this one week where I went and had, do you know those ice creams where they're called drumsticks? They have
Yeah,
like
of
a
course.
phone.
Yeah.
So I went and ate one of those every day.
Yeah.
And And then I was like, I'm so sick of this because I actually feel so gross, like from eating it,
Mm.
like the sugar, and I was like, my mind doesn't feel clear. And I started to notice the actual physiological effects that the sugar was having on my body that weren't just about the way that my body looked. Because I actually wasn't that hungry. And so I was it was a weird thing. I was like losing weight while I was still eating it, but I felt off and I still felt a little depressed because of what sugar actually does to your body. Right. And so it was just a really fascinating thing for me to then see, like, do I truly want to eat this? Do I really care about this? Is this truly going to give me the satisfaction? And even a couple weeks ago, I was like, I really want just like a random ice cream. And I stopped at like Dairy Queen and got like a little blizzard. And then I was like, I do not even resonate with this. I took like one bite. I was like, no.
My favorite.
Yeah.
I love when that happens. That happens to me so often. But I actually think it's way more powerful. And I've said this to you probably 100 times, but like it's so much more powerful to just get it and have a couple bites and throw it out than to not get it at all. Like not
Totally.
getting it all and creating that restriction, the only way that you were able to really see with the drumstick, do I actually want it or do I not, was because you allowed yourself the opportunity to experience it. But if we restrict it before we allow ourselves the opportunity, the inner teen, which is the rebel, is always going to come out and like she's going to wait for an opportunistic moment when you're like at your weakest point, and then she's going to rebel. And then it's going to come from a place of self-sabotage, right? It's not coming from a place of like, you know what, I really enjoy eating this drumstick and so I'm going to have it. It's coming from like, I'm unworthy, I have low self-worth, like I'm never going to get this job, I'm never going to be successful, and so I'm just going to like eat my feelings and try and emotionally regulate this way.
Totally. And I think like just even knowing that that is what is going on is the most powerful thing because it's like we're humans. Like we like
Yeah.
to intellectualize, we need to know. So it's like we need to know that. And then when we actually put that into practice and start doing the emotional regulation in a different way. And also a big thing for me because sugar was always my thing. I wasn't ever like, I'm gonna go have a turkey sandwich and binge on that. Like, no, gross. Um, but I think that another piece is I realized that there was this level of actual sweetness missing in my life. And so
Oh.
it's like, well, where is that sweetness missing that I'm trying to fill it with literal like sugar and physical sweetness? And this is actually something that a lot of earth signs go through.
Mm.
You and I are Taurus and Virgo, and our Capricorn friends like definitely have this too because we like things that we can touch. We like the material. We like, what is of the earth. And so if we're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel fulfilled, let me get something that I can hold and eat and chew and taste to fulfill me. But it's like, that's not going to bring you the real fulfillment.
Oh, said so well. And honestly, like it was just such an aligned thing for us both because, I knew right off the bat, like when you're like, I want to do the detox program, this is the biggest misconception or the biggest mistake people will make when they're like entering my world is they'll be like, I just want to do the detox. And I'm like, okay, yes, only if there's zero like dysregulated relationship to food. If there's a dysregulated relationship to food or body, like MFM has to come first because the detox, like the parasites, the digestive disorders, like those are all side effects of like the emotional being off, right? And so we do have to go back to the inner teen. And some people don't want to do the inner work, and that's okay. Like I'm not the coach for you, but like if you actually want to sit down and like get to the root of it so that you just don't experience it for the rest of your life, because I can say, Natalie, and I'll take half credit for this, just kidding, it's all you, but really since then, like watching you expand, like which has nothing to do with body image or food or anything like that, like watching you really come into your own power, creating an incredible business, launching new programs, like just being so fucking magnetic, like that level of you is not possible when we have these low vibration disorders, right? So this is not about the food, it's not about the body image, it's about like stepping into your highest self, and then we just kind of have to go back and like figure out what's blocking us in order to get there.
1,000,000%. Thank you so much. And like, there's one other thing too, is that, when I first launched my business, it was 5 years ago and I had a lot of success, but it got to a point that after 2 years in, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was falling back into my patterns. And it's
Mm.
because there was still that like 5% of me that was that low vibration. And I had to go through this whole kind of like death and rebirth and find you, praise the Lord. And here we are again.
Okay, so let's step into like astrology and how incredible it is, and I'd love to go through like my chart and some of the things that are transitioning right now, so that we can really give the audience a good depiction of, first of all, what it would be like for them to book a session with you and like what kind of information you're able to provide for them, but also so that selfishly I can know what's going on and we can see how the planets align with like what's actually happening in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, babes. I am so excited to talk to you about my signature program, the Mindful Method. This is the exact same method that I have been using with hundreds of successful clients to help you heal your relationship to food, to increase confidence, and to lose weight without dieting or killing yourself at the gym. If you're sick of not feeling like your best self, if you're sick of promising yourself that you'll start again on Monday, if you're sick of going on restrictive diets only to gain back the weight, I can tell you right now that if you gained it back, it did not work. You know what's healthy and what's not. You do. You just continue to choose the unhealthy option anyways. And a meal plan will not solve this issue. There is no amount of restriction or discipline or willpower that is going to stop you from self-sabotaging. The body follows the mind. Imagine a life where you don't have to think about what you can or can't eat. Imagine a life where you feel confident in all of your clothes, where every day in every way your body rebalances and you lose all of the weight so you find the truest, healthiest version of yourself. Imagine never having to start again on Monday. This is what happens when you focus on transforming the brain so weight loss is effortless. The body follows the mind, and it's time you actually get to the root cause of your issue. If you are ready to transform and find the truest, healthiest version of you without letting go of your favorite foods, I invite you to fill out the application in my bio. And if you're a good fit, we'll be in touch soon. Back to regular programming.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you because it's so much more fun to go through the chart like that. Okay, so I mean, right now, everyone has kind of been hearing about like on the collective, we have Pluto, which is leaving Capricorn. And just a quick thing about that, Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth and transformation. Now, here's what's so funny. You know how there's that saying where it's like, what do they say? It's like big ego, little man or something, or like big something else, little man.
Yeah.
That's where Pluto is. Okay, so Pluto is literally the dwarf planet. Like it's this tiny ass planet, but it has like the biggest impact. So Pluto, if anyone has a birth chart or has seen what the planet, like we call it the glyph or the symbol of Pluto, is it looks like a man with its hands up, like help. So it's really funny. And so what it does though is it's all about transforming things, and it can give us this sense of like, oh my God, WTF, like what is going on? So for everyone on this collective level, it's moving it's moving out of, the way that we do things that we feel like we should do them, or that, oh, this is what I learned, for the last 16 years, and I'm going to keep trying it. And it's like, nope, that's not happening, and that's how it is for you, especially right now, Jordana, because, if you're trying to do anything the way that you've done it before, it's not going to work out. And
Okay,
Pluto,
Natalie. So not only is that so accurate for me in business, like the things that would work before that would not even just bring in clients, but like would serve my community, the way that I would like advertise or get people on masterclass, like none of that is working in the way that it was before. And I'm sitting over here being like, what the fuck is going on? But also, funny story, my mom, both my parents are like they're old and they're very like by the book people. Like until I'm a doctor, my dad's just not gonna think that I'm anything at all ever or secure or safe. And I just had a call with my mom right before we hopped on this call. And I was telling her that I'm planning to go to El Salvador to like work on some things with business. And she like lost her mind. She was like she was like, you need to be at home, da 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 da. And I know it's coming from a place of like they don't understand the new way of like doing things, or like they don't understand technology, they don't understand my business and how unconventional it is. And so for a moment I get pulled back into that, oh no, I need to do things the right way, I need to do the 9 to 5, I need to go back to medical school. And it's just so funny that that happened like right before I hopped on this call, because it was that trying to pull me back, and I'm like, but no.
totally. And that would be be like the worst thing possible that you could ever do. And I hope anyone who's listening to this, like, know that, like, if you were to try to go back into your quote unquote shoulds, it will completely blow up in your face.
Mm.
Because what's happening is that on November 19th, Pluto moves into Aquarius. And this is all about innovation and impact. And it is about togetherness and it's about collaborating. And it's about you saying, here are my gifts, here's what I bring to the table, and here's how I'm going to benefit the world, and also how the world is going to benefit me, right? The Aquarius symbol, it's these like little radio waves, and it's cool because, you know, here we're in the most technologically advanced time that we've ever been in, right? Like you and I are across the country from each other and we're like talking in real time. Like it's really like this was the Jetsons in the 60s, you know, like
Yeah.
and and it's getting better and faster and wilder, like ChatGPT, AI, like all of this is happening now. And the reason why I bring up the symbol for Aquarius is yes, it's these radio waves, so everything is literally like telepathy almost, and online in the quote unquote cloud. But there's these two lines, and the first line here is about me. And so it's like, well, who are you? What do you bring? And the second line is about we. And it literally has like an M and it has a W. So it's like me and we. So
Whoa.
Pluto moves into this. Yeah, this is something that like I've never heard any other astrologer talk about. It just was like a download that came to me one day. I was like, oh shit, like that's why it looks like that.
Ah,
Because there's a reason why every single sign, why each thing looks like it. Like for example, Sagittarius is the arrow. It's all about travel. Scorpio, oh my gosh, the Scorpio one's actually my favorite because it has this symbol, but see how this like point is pointing out? It's
mm,
because the stinger goes outwards. It stings other people
mm.
when it is angry. You know, it's so sometimes disappointed or sad within, but it will sting outwards. Whereas we look at Virgo, which is your sign, and the stinger goes
Oh my
within.
gosh. Goes
It's
in.
uh-huh.
Self-criticism.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Exactly. Super
Wow.
judgmental to
Yeah.
itself and then projects it outward. Yeah, exactly. So it's wild. So, you know, as Pluto though is moving into Aquarius, we are going to see this massive shift for everyone where there's going to be a lot more of like, how is it that we are supporting and helping each other during this time? And for you, it's moving through your first house. So this is completely changing your identity of who you are. So actually, since 2018, it's been rocking your subconscious world, your house of like your inner world, your inner demons, your dreams, like, you know, really obviously rewiring your brain, but kind of rewiring all of your relationships as well, like with your family, with your mom especially. And
Mm.
so now it's like the focus is really going to be on you for the next 20 years.
Oh, thank God. I'm so over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in 2018 is when I had my adrenal crash. So that was like, and that was like, it was because of that adrenal crash that I then was like, just like you, I was a nutritionist. I already had a successful business. Well, I was working with a medical doctor at that time, but like I was like a successful nutritionist, just with like a lot of demons and like binge eating and like just like running marathons, like driving myself to the into the ground. And it was because of that adrenal crash that I couldn't do anything that way anymore. And so then I started to learn about like psychology and like the mind and body connection. And it just like literally plummeted me in this direction.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me blow your mind. So this is actually one of my favorite things that I do with clients is that we'll go backwards and look at what was happening when like the crazy shit in your life was happening. And so you can see here, so see how this Pluto here is now directly talking to this planet. So
Yeah.
they're called conjunct. When the planets are conjunct, it means they're just like next to each other. So Pluto had been hitting this planet, which is Neptune. Neptune is literally the fog that we can't see, and it rules anxiety and
Oh
it
my.
rules adrenal fatigue because Neptune is like, imagine Neptune as like the water and like the fog that's over the water, where it's almost like you're falling into this fog where you're like, I can't get up. Who am I? What am I doing? Probably having crazy dreams, and then led into the higher octave of it because it could have been going back to drugs, but instead it was like, no, I'm going to study my brain and figure out what's going on beneath the surface.
It literally that those were the exact thoughts that I had. I couldn't get out of bed. Like, who am I? What am I doing? Like, I literally couldn't even walk around the block without like fainting. Like it, like I was so in, and like brain fog was like the biggest word for me at that time because I just like I couldn't even see. I just, it was, everything was so foggy. So it's actually, if you guys don't believe in astrology. You need to like, you have no idea. Okay. So that is perfectly aligned. That's exactly what was happening at that time.
Yeah, it's so wild. And I mean, we can even see, kind of like what you're in and what you're going through now is, to even discuss more a little bit about how you're like, well, the things that I was doing before for my business weren't working. We have, I'd say that there's like 2 to 3 different houses. So the houses in astrology are, if you have your chart, it's like these triangles, these kind of like pizza pie slices. And the houses all represent different areas of our life. And so the sixth house and the 10th house are always where we look for career. And right now, the sixth house is being activated by Mars. So, Jiordana, your sixth house is ruled by Cancer. So, this means that in your day to day life, you have a very Cancerian type of experience. Like, Cancer is the mom, but it also is taking care of people. And it's
Mhm.
very powerful. A lot of people underestimate the power of Cancer, but Cancer, if you think about the mother, like the mother is the most powerful thing on this planet because
Mhm.
what else is like pushing a baby through the vagina? And like, and also has the gut intuition, can literally just sense anything and is like, I'm taking care of kids and I'm running a business. Like it does so much. And so your sixth house, having Mars moving through Cancer, is saying like, we are completely essentially dismantling the way that you've been doing your day to day life for the last, however long. And the reason that it's doing this, and it's not doing it in this way that's like Pluto. Pluto comes in and like forces you to get super sick and rewire your whole life. But Mars is fire. And so it's saying we're going to burn certain things down to then also illuminate, because we have to think about like, what does fire do? If we sit around a bonfire, it gives us illumination to illuminate like what's working and what's not, what's good and what's not, like what also if you said that you just talked to your mom, like it's funny because Cancer is the mom. So like there's going to be a lot of probably mom stuff happening for you, even you as a mom, right, over the next 6 months because Mars is moving through Cancer until April and it's
Mhm.
retrograding back and forth. It's moving into Leo, which is also your relationship house. There's going to be a lot of relationship activation as well. But yeah, this is really kind of where this influence is going to be. And it's so fun to know, especially where Mars is for people, because that just means that like we have a lot of action happening there.
Yeah, so interesting because we're moving back in with my parents on Monday. So I'm gonna be forced to live with my mom and also mom my children with my mom there, which was not easy when I was in Italy. Like it was terrible for our relationship. And I'm going to El Salvador like with my boyfriend. So it's like it literally is both those elements. It's the relationships, but it's also family life, mothering, like and how those things like go together, but also how they clash. And it totally like this totally resonates. This makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Right. And the funny thing too is like your Mars, so when you were born, Mars was actually in Cancer. So you're in something called a Mars return right now. So we have, our Saturn return, Jupiter return. But what the Mars return does is it's like, ooh, like let's bring sparks, like let's bring more fire to all of this. Let's fully reactivate those. And but the thing that's so beautiful about Mars is that it's not just like here to burn it down. It's like it's also here to fix things and activate things in a way that can be really healing because Cancer is about healing energy, right? So it's like, I think that you can also decide that this situation with moving back in with your mom can also help to heal your guys' relationship because in your chart, you have Mars and the moon conjunct, meaning they're right next to each other. So with this, it's like you are driven by your emotions. You are
Mhm.
also driven by the subconscious that is your mother.
Mm.
And that is something that like I think this opportunity, I mean, clearly since we have Mars here also, is being lit up for you to kind of, I think, finalize any being run by her at all, and
Oh,
also seeing for her for who
girl.
she is, right? In this
Mhm.
whole, because you've clearly obviously been doing this your entire life, but it's
Mhm.
like this whole new way that you get to do that. It's really beautiful because it's almost like you get to step into being the matriarch while she's stepping into being the crone.
Mm. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, because I was having a conversation with my boyfriend, the one I'm going to El Salvador with, and he was like, well, like, what's the worst thing that can happen if your mom doesn't want you to go to El Salvador? I'm like, but she doesn't understand, like, this is good for business. It's not like just me taking a vacation with my boyfriend, whatever. But it was really interesting because when he posed that question to me, I was like, well, yeah, but like, what can like, because what can she really do? And because my whole life it's just been like, well, if my mom says something, then like it must mean I'm a bad girl, and it must mean like, and so now it's just kind of, I guess, reclaiming that power of like, no, I am my own authority, and like, love you so much, mom, and we need to establish a new relationship, but like, I can't be run by her. Like, I got to run my own shit.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's interesting too, because I think like remembering that everything is her projection, right? Like her
Yeah.
opinions are not about, like her opinions are about her. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, of course, they're her wanting to protect you, but at the end of the day, like that's her fear. That's
Mm-hmm.
her not enoughness. That's her judgment. It's not you.
Oh, thanks, Natalie. Wow, I feel like I can have a good conversation with her after this too, because I was like livid. I was fuming before we hopped on this call. So thank you.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like we can always look to, this is like such, oh my gosh, this was so mind-blowing for me. We can look to our moon sign, and that moon sign is going to describe our mother. So it's interesting because what sign is your mom?
She's Sagittarius.
Okay, interesting.
I know.
So yeah, but so there's something, well, isn't she, where is she from originally? Did she grow up in Canada?
No, she's from Italy.
Okay. So that makes sense too, because Sagittarius always is about travel. So it's like she is so connected and tied to her old roots and to the Italian belief system, right? That's why
Mhm.
she's like, you don't go, you work and you do this and this and this, right?
Mhm.
But when we look at your moon sign, we can see that your relationship to your mom is a very Cancer type of relationship. And
Mhm.
that is like her holding on to you so tightly with the claws that it's
Mhm.
like she doesn't realize she's like suffocating you with the pinchers. But
Legit.
instead, it's like she's like, I love you so much. I'm gonna squeeze you so hard and keep you in. And it's like moving into that compassion with her of like, I love that you also have a Cancer moon because you have the possibility of being like this with your kids too, right? Or with yourself and your emotions,
Mhm.
and getting to that place of, okay, can I really just give her this this love and grace, for because I know that she's doing this out of pure love, even though she might be expressing it in a way that is not actually helpful or whatever. It's like that's just only the way that she knows. And it's funny because Cancer and Capricorn are also very tied to history and like ancestry and tradition. And so it's like, and here you are as an Aquarius rising who's like, I'm here to shake shit up and be different and like
Mhm.
completely rock and radicalize things. And so it's just bringing those energies together. And that's why I love astrology, because like we can see that the more that you're actually able to empathize with her in this Cancer type of way, then maybe the claws can lessen.
Oh, that's such good advice. Yeah, one thing that I love about doing readings with you is and you can very clearly, I do this too. This is how I know this is happening for you, but like you just download so easily, eh? Like you talk a million miles per second, and I know it's not coming from you, it's coming from like my guides, or like just like a higher force, like using you to kind of tell me exactly what I needed to hear. Because I didn't even realize that this conversation with my mom that I had before I got on this call was going to be so relevant. But like just even the things that you've just told me now has completely changed my perspective on it. So now
Wow.
instead of going and like in combat with her, which is not going to get me what I want, it's going to allow me to like show up in a different way while still like experiencing the experience that I know that I need to have, which would be like leaving for 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And you get to go, and like you need to go. You should absolutely be going on this trip. And, for you, Scorpio rules, since we're in Scorpio season, um, Scorpio rules your 10th house, which is of career. So anything that is furthering your career or that is giving you more exposure is going to be really, really powerful for you. And I think just in terms of your moon sign being Cancer and with your mom, it's like you get to think about which version of Cancer you want to be. Do you want to be who's like this beautiful, loving mother that's like, I have open arms, I'm here with peace and love, and maybe we can imagine something new together? Or do you want to also come back as the combative crab? Like literally like a crab. Like crab is not like something attractive, right?
Mhm.
And so just deciding like which version you want to come from, because that's your moon sign. And I had to go through this too. I'm a Gemini moon, and Gemini moon is literally the twins. It's like, okay, which side do I want to be? And when I look at my mom, I also had an experience where she went through psychosis, and so sometimes we didn't know what mood we were going to get. She was taking a steroid, and it really threw her into this really troubling time, and luckily she got over it. But that was when I tried to kill myself. Like I tried, because I was in such low points because of where she was, and it was a reflection of the shadow of Gemini energy. So everything within our moon can then reflect what our mom is also going through in the highest of highs or the lowest of lows, because at the same time my mom is also very much like the best side of Gemini. She is super creative. She's so funny. She makes friends with everyone. She's like at the grocery store making best friends with the clerk, like it's the most beautiful thing. So we can always come back to our moon, not just to understand ourselves and our needs, but to understand our moms and how to really make those relationships better.
Woo! So good. Okay, so you mentioned that we're going through Scorpio season right now, and that my Scorpio is going through the 10th house. So that's all about like exposure, career, which perfectly resonates as I go off to record a whole bunch of things in a very beautiful place. Stay tuned. What is, not just for me, but I know we'll do another podcast episode where we talk more about the collective, but what is this season about for the majority of people, and how does Scorpio play into that?
Yeah, for everyone, we are in such a huge rebirth. Like, honestly, when we had the full moon in Pisces 2 months ago, or 1 month ago, it was on September 17th, it was the final eclipse that was in. So, whenever we have the eclipses, they're tied to the north node and the south node. And the north node is the destiny of where we're going, of like where are we supposed to be moving into. And the south node is karmic things that we're releasing. And the reason why that eclipse was so important is because it was our final time in the Libra and Aries axis, meaning that we are all stepping into our sovereignty, into our bravery, into our courage. And everybody on a collective level has also been letting go of all of their relationship stuff from the past, and also the like codependency. What am I leaning on? What am I relying on? Am I looking to my friends, to social media, to boys, to sex, to my parents for validation? Like, where is it that we are out of balance? And how can we step into just being whole and complete as ourselves? And so when we had that final eclipse, it was this like shift of, okay, I'm no longer like this time is done. Like, we are no longer being in the dependency on others and on what other people think, and also on, a lot of things with like social justice. It's also very interesting to watch in the US what's going on with politics right now, because there's a lot of really old ways, even like make America great again. We're not going back. It's not again. It's about moving forward. Like, I'll tell you, Trump is not going to win, because the
No?
astrology, yeah, I'm very open about talking about this, like, because the astrology is about moving forward, and he wants to move backwards. And
Mm.
so for everyone, it's about how is it that we can move forward within ourselves and also be in our own energy, where we are not so influenced by outside perspectives, and also by like what other people make us feel. How can we remain in our own feelings regardless of what is being thrown at us? It's kind of like I have this visual of like this beautiful golden bubble almost, there. It's like people are trying to like spear in, and they can't get to us.
Mm.
So a lot of that was activated during that last eclipse. And every single full moon up to this is just going to bring us into that heightened version of this new earth that we get to create.
I'm so excited to see what transpires from that. But I also do really resonate. I think the hardest part for me personally is I'm Virgo sun, so like I like to know all of the answers. I'm very logical and very like pragmatic, and I like to know exactly. I'm a big planner. Like, we haven't even bought our tickets to leave on Friday, and I'm like, wish we like a play flights with it, and like it's just like it's awful for me. Like, I need to know exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. I like to plan everything out. And so normally when I go through transitions, with the exception of 2018, because at that point I was very, very lost as well, but in for the majority of, even building my business to where it is, like I can't predict the future, but I do know what the next like two steps are, and I know where I am now. And I think for me, and I think part of this is like stepping into that like Aries energy and letting go of the Libra, is it's not, it doesn't feel easy is the word that wants to come out, but it feels like I'm stuck in the like the darkness of like, oh no, I have to let all of this stuff go. And I'm like terrified to step into the like I'm independent and the brave aspect of it. And so I'm just saying this because if you're listening and you're, because a lot of the way that Natalie, of course, you talk about astrology is like we want to look at the light. We want to know that, of course, everything's going to be okay. And that is the truth. That always is the truth. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel that way. Like this has been the hardest fucking like 6 months of my life. I mean, with the exception of 2018, like I'm literally, I said the other day, I was like, it literally feels like I've been in a nightmare for 6 months. And regardless of what you guys see on Instagram or whatever, like personally, it's been a lot of like breaking down, breaking down, breaking down. And when we don't know what that identity looks like moving forward, it's hard for me, especially as a Virgo, to not understand like what my identity really is moving into the future. I know the things I want, but like it's hard to see myself that way when the things that are coming up are the things that need to be released. That's what I'm trying to say. So like the codependency, the people pleasing, the like the like Libra stuff.
Yeah, it's super hard. I've been going through it, like the 6 months prior to me moving out to BC, like really actually from when, from starting doing the parasite detox, like it really threw me, which was so good because it goes in and like makes you see all of your shit, right? It really opened all of this up for me where I learned because I have my personal South Node, like my past life, my past karmas are all in Libra. And
Mm-hmm.
so I get along really well with Libra type of people, or, you and I obviously are like, you have your Venus and Mercury in Libra, are like we hit it off so well. And I had to go through realizing that I pour so deeply into people and a lot of times don't receive it back.
Yeah.
And it really made me realize like, okay, I get to like tighten up my inner circle. I get to not pour out so much. Like I get to also realize what am I getting validation from? What am I addicted to? Is it likes on Instagram? Is it, the conversations that people are somehow feeding my ego? Like all of these old patterns that it's just like, no, none of this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Last question, and then I'll let you go into like some of your offerings and where people can find you. And don't worry, guys, there will be a part two of this, but it won't be so Jordana focused, I promise. This is like a personal therapy session. Thank you. But okay, so let's say potentially that if someone were to come to you and wanted to know about like, obviously we've talked a lot about business today, like money. I'm sure you can go through all of that with them. If someone were to be like, all right, I'm a Venus. My Venus is in Libra. My boyfriend's Venus is in Gemini. What does that
Mhm.
look like together? Like, how is that compatible, not compatible? Just be honest, just go for it.
Oh, it's like so compatible.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're both air signs.
Mhm.
So, it's funny because Jordan and I, we were having a twin flame conversation and twin flame that I just had a we're done conversation with. His Venus is in Libra and my Venus is in Gemini.
No, stop.
I swear to God. Yeah. So this is hilarious actually. Um, so, okay, here's the thing with Venus. Like when you both have your Venus, essentially they're like talking to each other, right? You're like, here's my love language. Like yours is, we talked about this before. You're like the fairy tale. It's fun. You want to like be beautiful together, create together, and have the like whole romantic experience.
Yes.
And so Libra also, the shadow of the Venus in Libra is it can sometimes be codependent or it can be like, I need you, I need this, I'm not complete without you, right? Whereas
Oh,
Gemini, and I can speak to this because I'm like everything Gemini, like my moon, that's why I talk about my Chiron and my Venus are all
yeah.
in Gemini, even though I'm a Taurus sun. So people are like, oh, I meet you and you're grounded and you're chill. But then I'm like, right? And so he probably has some type of energy like that too, where it's really fun and exciting and you're always learning. But the thing with Venus and Gemini is it needs to be constant. It's a sapiosexual, like it needs to be constantly stimulated. It will get bored easily. It's not bored of you, it's
Mhm.
bored of like, okay, what else are we doing? Okay, what
Yeah.
next? Okay, what's
Yeah.
the next thing?
Totally.
It needs laughter. It like there has to be laughter and silliness and play. Otherwise, Gemini will bounce when things get too heavy.
Mm,
And it's not like, oh, I'm gonna ghost you, because Gemini also, like, the beautiful thing about Gemini is because it is so intellectual, depending on other elements of the person's chart, like I have a lot of very deep placements. And so for me, I'm like, let's go deep and let's also be like laughing about it at the same time. So
mm,
if your partner has that as well, then, which it sounds like he does, then it's like there's gonna be that element where you guys can have both. But they're also, I think one of the beautiful things that you can bring in this too, because of your Libra, is make sure that the balance is happening there. Like
mm.
that it's not just like always deep or always too fun. Like there really gets to be the mix of it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like the Venus connection when both are in the same element is very strong.
Interesting. I think he's Venus in Gemini 12th house. I don't know if that makes a difference. And I don't know what my house is, what my Venus is and what house, but
Yours is in the ninth house. And yeah, if his is in the 12th house, then that would just make him someone who also is very imaginative, like who is very forward thinking, future thinking, and that he thrives when he's like quote unquote away. So going on a trip, going on retreats. I could see him, like making money while he's just off doing his own thing, because
yeah.
Venus also represents the way that we make money. So
Mm,
he would make money also, and we know this is what he does, but he makes money online because the 11th and 12th houses, they rule the internet, because the 11th house is where we're all like networking together and it rules technology, and the 12th house is things that are behind the surface. So like even though someone's posting a reel, we're not seeing the person like posting the reel, making the reel, like it's all like BTS, right? Like this is also the energy of movies and film and music, where it's like something that creates an emotion. So he's very good at creating emotion. It's also the house of addiction and
Oh, true. Let's throw that one in there. Okay, but what about my Venus in the ninth house? What does it mean that it's in the ninth house?
yeah, so it's travel, it's higher education, it's higher learning. So
Mm,
we look to Venus for not just love, but also for how we make our money, which is really cool when you think about like the things that we love are how we should be making money, right? Like that's like so legit.
ah,
Right? And also like
yeah.
love ourselves. That's
Mm,
when we make more money. That's why like the whole worthiness thing is so real. But yeah, it's like you make the best money when you also have travel. That's why I'm like, do more retreats, girlfriend.
you're
Like,
like, go away.
yeah. When you also, the ninth house is the house of publishing, and this can be publishing, like you publish your podcast, right? You publish, I'm sure you have, well, you've
Natalie, this morning I was like, I think I want to write a book. The
yes.
first time I've ever had that thought, like legit.
Oh my gosh. Okay, amazing. Yeah, well, it's in your chart. You're absolutely doing it because you also have Mercury there, so you're supposed to. Um,
Mm,
and then, the ninth house is also like being seen and it's being a teacher. It's kind of being this like wise sage guru. I have my North Node here. So it's like this is like where we're going. This is how you make your money. This is how you communicate as well. And the cool thing about the charts is that, so for example, like the ninth house, its original ruler is Sagittarius. So
mm,
even though your Venus is in Libra and your ninth house is ruled by Libra, it has a Sagittarius undertone. So it's
mm.
like your Venus is in Libra, but in the Sagittarius house.
Like the philosopher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, Natalie, I could talk to you about this forever. Thank God we're doing a part two. But obviously, if you guys are listening, you're probably already addicted to Natalie. And so, Natalie, you've got a lot of really interesting things coming up. I know you just launched a new program called Holy Wealth, which, like, truly, like, I'm like, can I make a spin called Holy Health? But like, we'll talk about that later. But
Okay, future collab coming
yeah,
up.
I think there's a
Hell,
collab coming up.
hilarious.
But it sounds incredible. I would love if you could share with the audience how they can find you and then what your offerings are and if they wanted to book a session with you and all that stuff.
Absolutely. So you can find me. I'm very active on Instagram. It's at Love Natalie Holbrook. And yeah, Holy Wealth is going to be launching in mid-November, and it's called Holy Wealth, You Are the Vessel. It is a high frequency journey into astrology and to you activating the wealthy, abundant, limitless mystic that you are. So it's kind of this three-part program where we're going to look at your subconscious, and we're going to use all of this through looking at your birth chart. So we're going to look at your moon sign, your Saturn, your planet, your Pluto, your Neptune. Like we can see in Jiordana's chart, like the subconscious of your mom, the subconscious of your body, the subconscious of food, all being in Cancer. And we go through and rewire all of that. And then we go into visioning and manifestation, where we look at Venus and Mercury and the sun and all of these elements of who you are through your chart, and see, well, what is your actual blueprint that you're here and supposed to be? Because, we probably have these feelings, like the fact that you were like, I just had this idea of writing a book. And it's like, well, it's right here in your chart. So and it's not like, okay, go do it, because it's actually not the time to do it. It's like, well, let's look at when is the time to do it, right? So we get into the transits and all of that too, plus a lot of super fun, hello witchy, woo woo, like manifestation practices. And then the final piece is putting it into action and negotiating for your life. So before I got into astrology and before I got into health and nutrition, my entire background that I've done kind of on and off is sales. And I am so passionate about people learning how to sell themselves, because life is a negotiation. Every single day, either you are enrolling or you are being enrolled. And that can be by other people, that can be by parents, partners, children, or it can be within ourselves. Like, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym today. Well, guess what? You just enrolled yourself in your old story. Or, oh, I'm going to go change my way and negotiate with the shitty feeling that I have and be like, you know what? I'm going to choose to be future and forward thinking instead. So it's really about this negotiation, because I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars in my life from sales, and I want to bring that to other people for themselves in their day-to-day life, but also for their business. So that's what Holy Wealth is.
Literally add to cart. Like it's like I'm like it sounds amazing and so juicy. And for me specifically, like when you just said you're either like you're enrolling in something else or you're enrolling in yourself, like that was just so powerful, because I was just literally thinking about how like every decision we make is either like a step back or a step forward, and like who's really in authority in those situations. And it's very easy for me to become complacent and like follow other people's leads or whatever. But I know as a business owner and like as a mom and all the other things, like advocating for myself isn't easy even at this point, and I've done so much work on it. So yeah, thank you so much, Natalie. And then also too, are you still doing readings? Like would people be able to book a reading with you?
Yeah, absolutely. People can still book readings. That is one of my favorite ways to just be able to shine a light on all of this. So if you don't want to do the entire program, we can do a reading based on that, or we can do a reading just like what we were doing today, to go through and see what's happening for you right now, and also just like why you are the way you are, and tapping into all of these places. It's also really fun to look in the past and see what was going on, because sometimes we need to just have that clarity of like, okay, this was all meant to be. And people can book that on my website. It's lovenatalieholbrook.com. Um, and yes, I'm here to serve, and I never set out to become an astrologer, and it was a gift that just came and changed my life, and I know that this is now my mission and purpose in the world.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Natalie. If you guys like this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with somebody who might need it. And I'll see you back on another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Bye.